what a successful project manager does. My name is Guilherme and I'm a project management expert. I help professionals to become successful project managers. How I do that can be in a very different ways, from training to help for project managers to gain the required project management knowledge foundation, up to mentoring, consulting, or even teaching like more soft skills and what you don't see as hard skill like waterfall, agile, scrum, but they are required if you want to succeed there. If you are interested in that, check in the links here and see how I can support you. The topic I'm going before, of course, I start, make sure you like and share this video here, so you help this video to go to more people and more people can learn project management. You also help me to understand the value that this video has there for you. The topic I'm going to talk about today is what successful project managers does. That topic come up based on a question that I got in my on my Instagram Q&A box there. Basically, the question was: a project manager run meetings, a project manager like do minutes of meetings there. How can I How can I better multitask to make sure I can do more things? What's the first thing that you need to understand, and that's very important? Your goal as a project manager is not run meetings. Your goal as a project manager is not making minutes of meetings there. You as a project manager, if you want to be a successful project manager, you do those kind of things, but those type of things they are means to an end. Let me put here an example what I've seen happening there. A few years ago, I joined a company, and they were trying to develop their project management department. That's, of course, one of the reasons that they ended up hiring me there. And there were project managers there. They were managing projects. But what they did was basically they would run meetings. They would see if tasks are done or not. They would make notes about that one. And that was basically the type of work they were doing as a project manager. What happened if you only do that? Well, no one was taking care in this company about the business case, meaning, for example, the customer would come and say, "Hey, I need you to redesign this part here." Well, to redesign this part here, they would have to redesign a component of the product. Then that means that they would have to change some things in the assembly line. They would have to change with the supplier, changing tooling with the supplier, and then you need plan like a phase in, phase out to make sure that all the old parts are out of stock and you put the new parts. They were doing everything, but they were not charging the customer anything. And you can imagine that they were been doing that at the time for a couple of years. So basically, the business case for the project was gone because they did not have clarity that you start a project and at some point you end the project. You need to release the project for production. And I understand, like, if you are working with a software, for example, and you can have a product backlog that will exist as long as the product exists, and you can keep releasing different versions from the software as it happens, like, for example, with iOS from the iPhone. From time to time, the Apple release a new version there. But for a physical product, that's quite expensive. Can you imagine that you need to review the design, then you need to change the component, and that would affect your the supplier, so you need to pay for the supplier to adapt it, to change the tool. That affect your manufacturing site, because if depending how you change your component, you need to change your assembly line and all those things. And you have a lot of different versions that you end up having to manage. All those things, they have a cost. And in the end, like, if you have to do that, that's not real a big problem. That's not the worst case in the world, but it has a cost. And if you are doing that for free, just because whatever the customer is asking, you are doing it without thinking it, that gains. That's why they kill the business case. Because every time you change, then you need to run a new validation in the product, because this type of product would be used in a car. So you cannot just change something and don't see if it works, and then you have to run a new validation, and then suddenly come up to another change. Then you keep repeating that. The cost goes quite high. Then, of course, the unit price, the margins of the product, they start to drop, and the business case was just a mess. So why I'm giving this example? Just to show you that if you just run meetings, you're going to have a problem there. If the only thing that you are doing there is running meetings, you're going to have a problem there. So why you are running meetings? The project manager, he or she needs to understand the goal of the project, what the project wants to achieve there. That's why, because the goal of the project, what the project wants to achieve there, it's the value of the project. And this is so important that this is one of the main reasons why a lot of projects fail, because they do not have clear goals as they started. Because you're going to see in practice a lot of people have they have an idea, say, "Oh, I think that would be a nice idea to do it," and they move to execute it without fully understanding if, without making an assessment if this idea would be really adding value for the organization, if it makes sense, if this idea is aligned with the strategy of the organization, and they just move and jump into the execution there. Your job then as a project manager is to think about it. And I know at sometimes the project is approved and you need to execute it, and you say, yeah, but that's not fully aligned with the strategy. Okay, sometimes you cannot change it because in the level that you have, depending on the portfolio management, the organization, and so on. But at least you need to have clear what's the project goal there. Why? Because once you understand what's the project goal, what type of value that the project can add to the organization, you can start to you first of all, you can work with the team to align it. How do you work with the team to align it? Well, usually you have meetings to discuss the progress of the work for the different team members. If it's a multidisciplinary team, you can discuss roadblocks, and the team members, they can talk among each other to understand how they can help each other, how their activities interfere with each other, and how they can work together to achieve this goal there. So, as a project manager, you are more in a lot of meetings. You sit much more as a facilitator to make sure that the teams are aligning, than sitting there to tell them what to do. So again, a meeting is a mean to an end. You're not going to run a lot of so your goal is not to run meetings. You're not going to be paid to run meetings. You are paid to deliver a project. That's a very different type of mindset there. Because then you are going to understand that you don't need to talk all the time in meetings. A lot of meetings, you you let your team talk. You can ask questions, of course. If there's a conflict, you can intermediate the conflict. You can interfere, and you should interfere. But for God's sake, your goal as a project manager is not to run meetings. That's very important to make sure that is clear there. Second point, your goal as a project manager is not to write minutes of meeting. Writing minutes of meeting, it's important. Yes, why? If you're having a discussion and you think, oh, it's understood, when you write down, and usually if you are doing this in a better way, you try to write down. If it's like a virtual team, you share your screen, or if you're in a meeting room, you put you present your screen there and show what you're writing down. Say, this is what I understood from our discussion. Does it make sense? Why? Because when you write down, you are writing down what you understood. And other people might be reading that, say, no, no, but that's not what I mean. So you find out misalignments in communication. So writing down, the first step, is help you to align the communication. And of course, aligning the communication helps you to achieve the project goal, because if everyone understands the same thing, everyone is aligned towards the same goal, then you can deliver a project with success. Then you have a chance to do the successful project. Of course, a lot of stuff might happen there, but you are writing something down not because you want to write something down, not just to have, okay, I wrote it everything down here. Yeah, but you need to make sure that everyone reads and understands what you do that. And a lot of times, if you do this after the meeting, what happens is people will not have the time to read. And you are going to find out later on. That's why it's a good practice to write down while you are in the meeting and you ask people to read it. Does it make sense what I'm writing down here? Everybody agrees. Does it reflect what we discuss? Does it reflect what we mean? So that's one of the goals what you do there to get alignment. Second thing, that why it's good to write down, because Sometimes you decide something, you discuss about something, and some projects can take years. So I handle a lot of projects that usually take between 1 and 3 years. What happens if you discuss something now? 1 year in the future, there's a big chance that you're going to have not exactly clear picture what was discussed there. And different people will have different memories from what being discussed there. Why? Because this is just how the brain works. That's a bias. That's a psychological bias that you have there. Usually, your brain tends to change a bit how you see that because memory, how things works, and I'm not a psychiatrist or a psychologist, so I'm not going to discuss how your brain works, but that happens. And if you do not believe me, try to tell a story for with a talk with a friend, talk about a story that happened, I don't know, 5 years ago or 10 years ago. The chances are that sometimes you mention something, then the person said, "Ah, that's not what happened there." Then that he's going to mention something differently there, and that might be slightly different versions on what you remember there. And then that also helps in project. But if you have something that's written down and then you can come back, it helps you to bring clarity, mainly for an important decision, saying, okay, why did we took this decision? Why did we decide to go in that direction? That helps you to gain clarity, again, to go back and to have a reference point. And because if it's written down, no one will change it. That is always a reference point, so we come back. That's why, for example, you have a specification in a project. I work with a lot of engineering projects there, product development, sometimes construction, and all those projects they have a specification because if you have a good specification, that will be clear what needs to be delivered, and you can also use the specification to have a quality measurement there because you're going to compare what you deliver versus the specification, and if they match, you're delivering in the quality that it was required from you. But it's not only write it down. If you write down, no one review it. Is you write down a lot of notes and then you never check back. You're creating paper. So your first goal there is the project manager is not there only for running meetings and writing notes. Another very important point: the project manager is not there to create documentation. Yes, documents are important, exactly for the reasons I just described. It helps you to align in what needs to be done. It helps you to align communication. It helps you to align to have a reference point in what was done, what was decided, and what needs to be done. But the documents they should be there as a mean to an end because your focus as a project manager is to deliver value for the project. So in the example that I mentioned, that people they were running a lot of meetings, they were executing a lot of tasks. However, the project was a mess. They were not delivering the value that the organization was expecting it because you always need to think of what's our goal here? What's the big picture that we see here? So, as a project manager, you should not only be thinking on what needs to be doing and what needs to be done today or next week. If you are a good project manager, you are working on anticipation. Why I'm saying that you are working a bit on anticipation? Because risk management is anticipation, and all projects they need risk management. So what's going to happen? You as a project manager, you're going to have your alignment with the team in the frequency that you think it's necessary for your project. A lot of projects I do this weekly because weekly it makes sense on the type of project that we have, depending on the pace of the project or depending on the phase of the project. You can do that daily, and that's also why you call the like if you're following Scrum, you have the daily Scrums there. But it's very important that you don't think only on that because if you are thinking about your job as a project manager, you are leading the team. So your team is going to be executing. They are going to be doing the day to day of the project, executing their tasks. It's up to you as a project manager to say, okay, now my team is handling it. I'm going to check how things are going with the frequency that we agree. But let's see. Our goal is, for example, to release this to production in the next 4 months. And then we need to start to supply to the customer. Okay, if we need to start to supply for the customer, for example, In 4 months, in day two, what do we need? Oh, we need to start production in few weeks in advance, because depending on the type of product, it might take few weeks or 3 weeks or whatever timeline that you have. You might need to book capacity and say, okay, if I need to start production, for example, 1 month in advance from what the customer asked me, but then I need to have all the components there. If I need to have all the components there, I have some components with different lead times, maybe 1 month, 5 weeks, 6 weeks. That means that I need to order from the supplier. That means also that the supplier needs to have the material. That means the supplier, to start the production, to start the count lead time, they are going to need to have a purchase order. They need to have a forecast. So there are all the other types of things that you need to think about it upfront. And sometimes this upfront, depending on the type of project, can be a short period of time because of the nature on what you are doing. For example, if you are working only with software, it might as well be that you're not going to oversee 6 months in the future, depending on the type of software. Because if you are changing, for example, an ERP for a company, there's a lot of upfront planning that you need to do. You cannot do it in 2 weeks because you need to have everybody training, you need to have a rollout, you need to think about the invoicing and everything like that. But this depends. Some types of project, this upfront that I need to think on the future, had to be like 10 or 12 months in advance. Why? Because for a specific component, it uses a very special type of steel that was producing only in one company that was validated in Italy. And because of the quantities that we would have to buy, the company agreed with the company I was working on to have one time slot per year where they would produce the steel demand for the entire year. So you kind of need to think a lot in advance, because if you miss this time slot there for the company to produce the steel, they're not going to change the entire production just for you because the volumes were low and something. So sometimes you need to think well in advance. Sometimes, most of the times, few months, 3, 4 months, that was reasonable. Sometimes it can be much shorter because you have a time for reaction. What you need to do has less interference, less external interference for the project. So you, as a project manager, why you're so you need to anticipate things. That's risk management. So if you're only thinking about running meetings and taking notes and creating paperwork, you're forgetting about anticipating things. So you start to enter a vicious cycle there, that you start to have problems because of a lot of problems. You have more meetings, more tasks, and you forget about the future, and you just are thinking what needs to be done today, and you forget what needs to be done in the future, in the next steps, and so on. So your goal as a project manager, you need to think about in what, of course, what needs to be done today and what needs to be done in the future. That today, if you have a good team, your team will handle it, meaning that you make sure that people are aligned, you make sure that they're talking what needs to be talked. You need to make sure that if they need support, they know the roadblocks, you can help them. But you also need to start to think few steps ahead, because a lot of teams, for example, a designer, if he's going to design for a construction, then maybe he is designing the infrastructure or the foundation of a house. He's going to be focusing on that. He's not to think about, okay, but after that I need to start the infrastructure, because then we need to define a steel, then you need to buy the steel. The steel has a lead time of blah blah blah, and this needs to be in the construction site at this date. No, the designer will not do that. And the purchaser guy will say, when I have the design, I can buy the steel. It's up to you to close those gaps as a project manager. So that's how you add value for organization. So stop thinking about only on running meetings. If you are only running meetings, you are doing this wrong. You are doing part of the activities, of course, that a project manager does, but you're not delivering the value that's expected from a project manager. And of course, if you want to look salary wise or career wise, you're going to grow when you deliver more value. Because if you keep handling small projects and if you keep having problems because you're only thinking on the day to day tasks with your team, running meetings, writing notes there, you're not going to deliver the value. So it means that you're going to stay in a project manager coordinator, a junior project manager position. You cannot grow into the organization. So this is very important there, that your focus is to deliver value. So I mentioned about anticipation, how you're going to do that. Reviewing your timeline, reviewing your scope, reviewing your business case, talking with important stakeholders, talking with your team, asking your team what's going on. And if you, once you start to anticipate something, talk with your team members in this meeting. Hey, I know that in 3 months we need to do that, but what do we need to get this done? You ask questions. If you understand what you're doing there, you don't need to know all the details. You just need to know how to ask questions. Why? Because while you ask questions, or either someone in your team will say, "No, we don't go in that direction because this and this." So they are going basically they are going to tell you that you are wrong. Then you need to understand the what needs to be done in a different picture, which is already good. So you're not heading to the wrong place, or they are going to help you to solve the problem or to understand the problem. So this is very important. And coming back to the question that I got in my Q&A box, talking about how can I multitask to deliver more? I think I have few videos talking about that. But first of first and very important, multitasking will not help you to deliver more. So this is quite important there. Why? There's a lot of different things that you can do, but if you just look for a very simple perspective there, if you say let's assume that you want to send few emails there, instead of writing one email and send it, writing the second email and send it, you're going to start at 10 different emails and you start to write a piece of this, move to the next one, piece of this, move to the next one, a piece of this, move to the next one, and you keep doing like that. The time that's going to take you to send 10 emails from the first one to the last one will be much longer than the time that will take you to send one each time. Then the first mail will be out much faster. So this is just because you're not completing things, so that they cannot move for the next step. And there's also something that's called context switching there. If you do not know, you should know that. Context switching is the brain power that you lose from changing from one activity to another one. For example, in the example that I just give you about the email. If you start to write an email, you move to the next one. Once you go back to the first email, you say, okay, where did I stop it here? Then you need to make an effort. Your brain will make an effort just to understand. Okay, why do you stop it? To pull back or to catch back or to hook back the line of thought that you have there and to complete it. So more you switch, the context switching will end up eating all your time there, eating all your productivity there. So, and there's much more, of course. You can look for the Little's Law. So you're going to see that Little's Law says more things that you have in progress at any given time. In average means that the average lead time to deliver those things will be longer. But you can also look for the Pareto perspective there. Your goal as a project manager is not doing more tasks. Your focus is not tasks. Your focus should be in the outcome. So it's very different. It's important that you understand, for example, if you have a system, you can have an input, you can have an output. This output that you have in your system can have a very positive impact, meaning that will help you to reach an outcome that you want. But the same output can have a very low impact that will not help you to progress to the goal that you want. So the outcome will be very low. So what you are looking for there is not having more tasks done, more inputs to have more outputs. What you're looking for is focusing the right things. So focus on the right inputs that will bring most of your outcome. That's basically the Pareto principle there, or the 80-20 rule, that says that 80% of the results or 80% of the expected outcomes will come from 20% of your inputs. And that works a lot if you are going to, and so the idea is not you are going to focus in a lot of different tasks. And I can give you an example here that, for example, in few years ago, I was managing a big program there, And for a company, for this product we had, I believe, 20, 30, 40 derivatives, meaning that some parts of the component would change to form a different type of final product. And this bill of material of each product would have between 20 and 30 components. And some of those components, they were like very small pieces, like a plastic O-ring with a short lead time, something that's with standard size. So that's something that you could find very easily in the market to buy. And some other parts of this product, they were fully customized, meaning that they were more engineered, higher price, higher, longer lead time, and so on. What do you focus there as a project manager? You focus on the critical ones, meaning the ones that are more engineered, longer lead time, more costly, more time consuming, more challenging for quality. Why? Because if you do that, then it's you're focusing things that are going to bring big results. If this, for example, this complex plastic part goes right, finding the right O-ring in this case would be much easier because if it's a standard part, you just go to the market, you buy something off the shelf. So if you guarantee the most complex part there, the chances are that you can guarantee much easier what's less simple. That does not mean, of course, that you can forget, but that means like in a bill of material like that, what do? You define items. By the way, that's also part of what you do if you're looking at procurement plan or something like that. You define the critical parts, which you're going to track with your suppliers much more closely, and the lower importance parts you kind of delegate for someone in your team. Hopefully, you have a team, right? If it's not, that would be difficult to execute a project, and you trust on the feedback what you're getting from your team member. It can be a buyer, can be a project coordinator, can be a planner, whatever, depending on different types of project. But that's a way to show you that instead of going crazy thinking about the 30 components that you have there and wasting time to discuss with the off the shelf product that you can buy, you focus your time in the most complex item that's going to bring most of the result for you or the most of the impact from what you want. So the question is, I'm trying to multitask. If you're trying to multitask, you're wasting your time. You're making yourself less productive because of context switching, because of focusing on the right activities. Because if you tend to do that, the chances are that you're going to make the same thing with your team. So your team will have a huge list of things to focus on. Then they are going to spread their focus, their activities, and then the critical items you're going to miss and you are going to create problems. Then you're not going to be able to anticipate things that you want. So be careful with that. Stop thinking about multitasking because that's not how you add more value as a project manager. Because otherwise, multitasking, you just need to execute more tasks. What you're going to do sooner or later, you're going to decide to work more. And I have and I have a much more content just discussing about why working more hours, only working more hours, will not make you a more successful project manager. But it's very important that you understand the basics. Time is limited. Do you think if you are a program manager, a senior project manager, handling more projects, bigger projects, more complex projects, you're not going to work more? Not all the time. I mean, sometimes you need to work extra, but those things should be exception, not the rule. Because if you need to handle a program, then you need to work 15 hours a day. You're doing something basically very wrong there. If you're trying to run a project, you can never finish your to-do list. You're doing wrong there. I can tell you. So think up, start to look this in a different way. Project manager, you're not there to only run meetings. You're not there only to write minutes. You're not there you're not there to try to do more tasks. You are there, so that's why I've the assumption there is very important. You are there to deliver value. And you say, but if I do hundreds of tasks that will I deliver more value. It's not true. I'm going to give you another example. I had in one of the programs my experience. Someone was leaving a company. I took over another program from another project manager, and they were discussing with the supplier about a cost of, I don't know, around 25,000 euros in a project with a business case of around 300 million euros. Do you know what's the impact of 20k, 25k will have in 300 million over 10 years? Zero. But they were forgetting to discuss change requests with the customer to because if there's a change request, impact on price, and then you can go and discuss a new price for your products there, which should help you to improve your margin, which should help you to improve uh, profitability. Because if you have a change, that might bring additional engineer hours, additional costs with supplier, additional validation requirements, and all those things in the end in a negotiation can represent a very big numbers. And when I mean very big, it can be in the range of millions. And you are telling me that you are discussing 25k and you are not focusing your time in discussing 1 or 2 millions that you have on the table. So you have, let's make an analogy. You have in the table here um, a jar with 25,000 euros there, and you have a jar there with 2 million euros there. And because you don't know, you just say, I'm going to take this one and I'm going to work in this one first. What happened is at some point they are going to clean the table. So if you take too long with the 25k jar, you're going to lose the 2 million. So that's basically an example of Pareto. Focus in the right things. The 20% of the inputs that are going to bring you 80% of the results or the outcomes. Remember, you're focusing the outcomes. Outcomes is different from output because output is whatever if you have a system, you put stuff in, you get stuff out. Hopefully, if your system is not broken. And when I mean a system, can be a process, can be a manufacturing line, or so on. But does not mean that whatever you get out is good. That's why we call it outcome because outcome is what you want. That's aligned with your goal. So your focus is focusing outcomes, focusing your goal. And all those things that you are going to need to do there, you need to run meetings, you need to talk with your team, you need to talk with stakeholders, you need to have key performance indicators, you need to review your timeline, you need to review your business case, you need to review your scope. All those things, all those project management things, if you are using Predictive, Waterfall, if you are using Scrum, if you are using Kanban, all those things, if you are using Lean, they're there to help you to deliver value. That's why companies they don't care if you're using waterfall, Scrum, Agile, Kanban, Safe, or whatever you want to use there. They care about the delivery because the company will not pay you to say, "Oh, you're running a Scrum, magnificent. You are running. You have all the ritus right. You have all the positions. But what about the project? What about the product you're delivering? Nah, but that one it's crap. The customer does not like it, the value is wrong, but I'm doing all the rhythms exactly what they call it. I do dailies every day, 15 minutes, time boxing, I do the sprint planning. Although I don't get any value from those things, no one cares about Scrum, no one cares about any type of framework. Companies are paying you as a project manager to deliver value. They're not paying you as a project manager to run meetings, to type stuff down, to prepare documentation. Mainly because with artificial intelligence, you can ask, for example, if you are using MS Teams, you can make the transcriptions and you can ask the artificial intelligence to make the minutes of the meeting for you. Of course, depending on the type of the meetings, you are going to need few interactions there, but that's something that's coming. So if the only thing that you can do is run meetings, artificial intelligence will be able to schedule the meetings. They can make the transcripts. So that's done. ChatGPT, depending if you have the right instruction, they can ask few questions to kick off a meeting. So if that's the only value that you can have, you should be very concerned with how the artificial intelligence might develop in the coming months there. But if you're focusing the value, you're going to use the artificial intelligence to make you more productive, more effective, more efficient there. So make sure that you focus on value, not on running meetings, not on minutes of meetings, not creating documentation there. Again, make sure you like and share this video here so it can help to reach more people and more people can learn project management. Of course, and you also help me to see the value that the video and the content that I'm creating here. If you have questions, feel free to ask questions here in the video or on Instagram. I have a daily Q&A box open on my stories. You can ask all the types of project management questions, and it's free because someone asked me this question: how much did you charge per question? Nothing. You can ask for free. And of course, if you're interested in more content, make sure you're following me on YouTube, but also on Instagram, where because every week there's more content on Instagram, every day there's more content to help you to support your development, to develop your project management skills. Because if your goal is to develop your project management skills, my goal is to support you in this journey. Thank you and see you. Bye.